The password is liquid or zombie or something.
Yeah, zombie dust.
We're broadcasting audio, but no video, right?
Okay, well, let's turn camera on.
Yay!
Yay! We're popular! Okay, and then I want to do... No? Okay, I need...
What do you need, baby cakes?
I need in your college.
Don't we all?
Well, we only have one viewer, so that's not going to help me. But I know what could help me.
Yes. Are they just next door? Do you guys know?
Probably, right? Probably. Wait, don't leave me. I need to forward you something. I need to forward. I hear booing.
Oh, good. Weird, but. We're only like a 4 minutes away. Oh no! It's you just sat down. Oh.
I bet you can change that.
Is that so that we don't cuss? So that we can be edited?
Sausage cunt balls.
Are we being censored?
Nipple boop.
Yeah, it's our company. What can I do?
Oh, so you can hear, but you can hear.
Trust. Yeah, I can hear you.
Still not on? Still not on.
All right. Yeah.
Is that supposed to work? Oh, I see.
So 30-second delay.
Yeah, that's 60 seconds.
Hello from the past. Greetings.
And now you're standing in front of it, Laura.
Hey.
So that means you'll be standing in front of it in about 20 seconds.
Yes. I'll be by. Yes. Yeah.
So wait, so here's the thing. You might not even need that microphone because if it's picking up what I'm saying and we can hear it clearly, even with you projecting and you can hear me talking normally, then we don't need it. If we do need the microphone, then I would have to turn my computer microphone down so it doesn't over amplify. Get out of the shot. Sorry.
Perfectly wrong. Exactly. Idiot. I wasn't sure what you wanted me to use for today tonight. And mine doesn't, I've been trying to download it. I didn't know if this would be allowed to out here, but I just bought mine. But I've been trying to download it. I Googled it. I just checked it out myself, yeah. So it didn't work. Yeah, I know last year it's not. It's not. Yeah, that's just artist, yeah. I can always send it.
No, it's just delay.
But I'm sounding like a robot.
That's normal.
Did you not know that? Don't worry, Kim, we got it. Oh yeah, girl. Alright, try to do it.
1, 2, 1, 2. See, it's on the
Very
left.
entertaining.
Is that one on too?
Yes, it is. We're going to ask questions to come and speak to the mic. Yes.
Do you want me to turn this off? I'm sorry. Okay.
What?
Just take it off for right now.
Yeah, for right now.
Brian, are you performing this year?
He's involved with 2 shows, right? I just like answering questions.
Well, we literally called every single artist
Yeah.
and told them that this was happening. So,
That's all you can do.
We had,
Oh, no, I'm serious.
That's how good they are.
we're having a thing. She's welcome.
Assistant gum.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh,
What's up?
a new development for the artists for new marketing opportunities here.
Okay.
Very recent. So it's official that we're invited to bus at the farmers markets at Eli Cheesecake on August 21st and 28th.
Cool.
So anytime,
You can add that into the.
if you want me to mention that, I could, yeah, I still got it. Michaela knows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she knows for the marketing materials.
Rebecca Kling, I believe it's Center Square.
Circle gets a square. I'm gonna ask if they can turn down the.
It's the USA.
Are you serious?
USA.
Are you seriously gonna ask them that?
Well, there is that. Does anyone have a lighter?
No.
I left the lighter at home, and next to it, there were matches. Like God's way of saying stop smoking.
Let me see if I can find him for you.
Don't go crazy, it's open.
I know, but what else am I doing right now? No problem. I'll look back here.
Or a magnifying glass.
There you go.
2 sticks or something.
DIY. Is it in prison, like the battery and the thumb foil?
I've never been to prison.
I haven't either, but I saw it on the show.
Okay. Is it orange is the new black?
Yeah.
I haven't seen this season.
Okay, we'll see.
I have 4 more episodes left.
What's that?
I said I have 4 more
I own
episodes left.
CDs, so I have to know orange is
Orange is
the
the
new
new
black just released a new season.
Oh, I
Yeah, so I happen to be able to like just sit and watch it all in a row. And I haven't had that much time. Is it as good as the first one, according to you?
I think it's been entertaining. Like I have enjoyed that they are not as focused on the season as before. They're actually doing backstories on all the other people who are waiting for. And
Why they're there.
yeah, and so far, like most of them have like really big stories. There's new characters.
Yeah.
A couple new ones, so that's good. No fire starters.
So
I bought my brother fire starters this birthday.
higher start.
Yeah.
Where's Drew Barrymore when I need her?
Twisted fire stop top.
Who was that man?
The Prodigy.
Yeah, Prodigy, yeah.
Prodigy or the Prodigy?
The Prodigy.
There's a difference.
There's D in front of Prodigy, I promise.
There's Prodigy and there's Michael.
Where? Here?
You so crazy. This guy. Who are you?
Okay.
What is it?
Marketing.
Marketing.
Yeah. What about your
This is even
Fringe
ever
show?
He's like, we go 25 years ago. Yeah.
It's multitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. That means like.
I just watched the videos.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the big
Well, that's fine.
distraction too. Like there's gonna be some Full House up here.
Yeah.
No.
What did you hear about the Full House?
Which
The
Which email do you use?
Was under market value. So what-
maybe Rebecca Kling, but they all go.
It's just so equivalent.
What? What's Friday night?
There was a joke in high school that has outlived anyone but me remembering what it was. Did we scare someone away?
everything's working. I wonder if I send it to my phone. I'm joking around.
Half an hour.
We should give a thought machine. No, I'm just laughing at something. Yes, well.
Do we have any online?
I'm showing we have 3 viewers.
There are a number of options. Yes. It's fun to look at different kinds of fire starters. I think there's always different. So that's why you might got with my mother first.
I thought he was talking about the song.
It was.
Oh!
There's several different fire starter conversations happening. So
Yes.
There it is.
It's bringing me right back to the 90s.
There was some, what was the controversy over this?
There was no controversy.
Slap my picture.
Yeah.
Slap my picture, which is the same people.
Yeah. But that video was extremely funny because it was like,
I just remember looking at this guy feeling he was a scary clown.
Yeah.
because he is a scary clown.
Hey! Welcome!
Hey!
Hi, people.
Hi. Hello.
Oh, you want some water? Yeah.
We got an intimate group so far.
Great. Yes.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, I know what I'm doing.
No.
Responsible.
Can you take me these?
Hey, Dodge. Can you tell people we're just going to hold for 5 minutes? Hi, everybody. We're going to hold for 5 minutes. We'll be starting soon. Soon.
That's the
Soon.
Pretty, will you say the exact same thing you just said?
Sure.
We will be starting in 5 minutes.
Hi, everybody. We'll be starting in just 5 minutes. So that's 1 minute. Yeah.
Can I help?
I like the idea of people watching. Do something like an hour. It's like that. It's angry once it's time to be like,
We're really talking about putting at the screen.
I mean, anyways.
at that time, you must say this guy.
Are you gonna say something?
No. I mean, I've been there, and I've hung out with those guys at USAT. U.S. Fringe Festival, they believe.
Because they do a free, they do the Cincy Fringe hard-hitting action media.
Is it good?
Yeah. Until they talk about shows that are open, shows that are closing.
And that's the manager of this.
What's the deal with
What did Eric know?
Chris? It's usually Chris and Sadie. Sadie is from Cincy. This year she had been on Chris Westman.
Eric sounds like that.
I think that's had his last 8 days since. So,
Probably. Good job.
You sound a little bit more clear. You don't look clear though. God, y'all look hideous. I mean,
All right. Let's see what it says. All right. Close the door. Good. Hey guys, can you close the door?
Yes.
Let's get started.
Yes, sir. Okay.
if everyone could take their seats,
Thank you.
settle down.
Settle down, please.
No, in the back, I think, yeah, there's a couple seats down front. Well, then you should have gotten here earlier. It's not my fault you can't find a seat, sir.
Dodge, how many people we got tuned in?
a whole 4 viewers.
Four viewers. Thank you for viewing us from far away. Hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our marketing. There's important news in there. Welcome to our marketing seminar for Fringe Artists 2014. We want to thank you guys for coming out and learning more about marketing. This is an important part of doing your part in making the Chicago Fringe Festival successful, and of course making your own individual show successful. So we appreciate you being here. Quick introductions. My name is Vincent Lacey. I'm the Executive Director of Chicago Fringe.
I'm Rebecca Kling. I am a touring artist. This will be my 5th year with Chicago Fringe. And I've done a number of other Fringe festivals.
And I'm James Giuliano, and we do the publicity for the Chicago Fringe Festival.
Yes. So that's all of us. I'm actually going to turn things over to Rebecca, since she's our sort of host with the most. Rebecca?
So, everyone here should have this fancy handout. At home, I think we got it on Dropbox, or maybe you can just imagine that you have it. That'll work. So we're going to be going through looking at producing a Fringe show. We're going to talk about things you can spend money on, things you don't need to spend money on. We're going to talk about a calendar and how to schedule out and budget out your Fringe show. And we're going to talk about some resources that are out there to help you produce your Fringe show. The first thing we're going to do is Vinny's going to talk a little bit about producing from the Fringe Festival perspective and what the Fringe Festival offers as a producing company.
See, that was all in here. You closed it.
You are looking at designer wallets.
No, it's right here. It's right here in the back.
Oh, there it is.
Where is it?
That was a cover letter. That was your resume.
That's
That's your cover letter.
Man, I swear it was here just then. So what we want you guys to know, here it is right there. Oh yeah, that's right, it's on there. What we want you guys to know is that we are here first and foremost, of course, to publicize the Fringe Festival, but we're also here to make your individual shows successful. We want you guys to be successful because, of course, that helps us be successful as well. I think what was sent out today to every 2014 artist was a copy of our marketing guide for 2014. I encourage you to sit down with a glass of wine and read through it, in the bath, luxuriously, enjoying all the rules that we have set out. But most of the stuff that we'll cover in the course of this presentation right now is also covered in the rules that we list here. First and foremost, please follow our directions. We write them in there for a reason. It's to help keep everybody on an equal playing field, but it's also so that we don't get in trouble with the neighborhood or our venues, and just so that we're consistent in the way we market the festival. So we write this stuff for a reason. Please take advantage of the time we spent putting it together. Check it out. In the marketing materials that we give you an official selection of the Chicago Fringe Festival logo. That has to be included on all of the marketing material that you guys sent out. So we will not feel shy about throwing your postcards away that you've spent money on, and posters, etc., if you don't include it on there. That's not to be harsh, that's just to say that it's very important, again, for continuity, that we include the official marketing, we include this official language on all the posters.
And you want it there. You want to be part of the festival. The festival brings people in. And one of the great things about Fringe festivals is you have sort of a rising tides lift all boats situation where when people come to other shows, that means they can also come to your show. So by including that you're part of the Fringe festival, it really does help you and not get your stuff done.
Yes. And we also want to make sure that you guys are telling your audiences right away from the top that every purchase, tickets cost $10 to your individual shows. Of course, there are packages that make individual shows less expensive, but everyone needs to buy a $5 button, which is their entry into the festival. Please make sure you tell people that. It makes our job a lot easier so people don't look at us with 5 heads. We try to get this out in every possible venue, social media, our website. Everybody who buys a ticket online will see this clearly mentioned. Every time you step in a venue and buy a ticket, we tell people up front. But it always helps for our artists to tell their patrons as well, hey, you're going to come to the fest, you need to buy a $5 button. The Fringe provides a lot of resources for you guys to use. In addition to the marketing that we do for the festival overall, we work with a PR company. James will address more of that later on. So when we ask you to fill out things in a timely manner, to give us your images, to provide us with descriptions of your shows, all of those things are super important. I know I sound a bit like a broken record, but that sort of stuff makes you look good in the program. If everybody else has a colorful image next to their show and a write-up of what their show is about and you don't, that makes you look silly. So don't be that guy. Year after year, we're constantly trying to hit an earlier deadline to be able to get our materials blasted out into the Chicago streets and into the marketing ether earlier and earlier. But if we're waiting on one person to get their marketing image in, then we have to push those things back. So we're going to set deadlines this year. We're going to stay with those deadlines. We're going to enforce them hard. Please make sure that you follow them. Yes, there's a question.
Yes, if we've already sent in our marketing stuff with that April deadline, are we free and clear as far as stuff you guys need? Or?
You should be. Yeah, you should
Unless
be fine.
I get some panicked email.
Correct.
Great.
We will communicate and we will try to follow up with you, but we will reach a point where we're like, hey, we haven't got this.
Great.
We're stuck. So maybe tonight you walk away and you're like, oh my gosh, I have this brand new idea for an image that I want to use. And we're happy to take a redesign, but once we hit a final deadline, which Michaela and our intern, whose name I'm forgetting, Mackenzie, Michaela and Mackenzie, how can you forget? Eminem, once they pass that on to you, please make sure that you follow their directions. I think that's it for the general Fringe perspective. We'll go ahead and, again, cover a lot of things on the way in, but I think just the very last thing I want to say is making friends with us is really good tactic to marketing your shows. The Fringe staff is constantly asked for recommendations on shows the minute people start showing up to the festival. Many people come to see a specific show, but many people show up just because they're interested in what the festival offers. And so we will begin marketing the shows that we know about. And that doesn't come necessarily just from seeing your show, but also hearing the things about your show and you coming up and telling us. So the people that sort of, early bird gets the worm, are the people that come up and are friendly to us, market to us, let us know about their show, and that really does make a big difference to how many people we direct towards you. So be nice to us. Rebecca?
So we're going to kick over to James for a minute to talk about a little bit about PR in general. And what we want to be talking about is the Fringe Festival as a whole is trying to get people into the festival as a whole. It is not the Fringe's job to get people to your show specifically. And so we're going to talk about how to try, once someone is in the festival, or how you can bring people into the festival, to then get them to come to your show.
Thank you, Rebecca. So Shout does PR, as they said, for the Fringe Festival, which means all the information that everyone out there and in here has sent them to put into the form that they send me. We get that and then we break it down. So we're trying to do overall arching stories to say, hey, the Fringe Festival is happening this weekend. But in addition to that, we do specific niche organizations where we'll hit Pioneer Press to say, hey, these people are in the North Suburbs. We'll hit the Oak Park Journal, say, these people are from Oak Park. We'll hit Neighborhood of the Sun, say, hey, these people are in the West Suburbs. So the form that they fill out for the Fringe Festival is really helpful. So when it says, like, what specific audiences are you looking at, then we can say, okay, for kids, we're going to hit Chicago Parent. We never specifically say, hey, Chicago Tribune, here's 6 groups that you have to follow. We say, here's the link to the Chicago Fringe Festival, and then you let us know who is coming in and that sort of reviewing as well. When Vinny was talking about images as well earlier, the thing that we always say is, number one, make sure that they're high res, which means 300 DPI, and make sure that they're a great image, because if it says, like, you know, Rebecca as Superwoman, like, written across her with a fake background and a cape blowing, no one's going to run that, because that's a marketing image. It's not a PR image. So if there's a story on you, and then we're trying to get it, we're trying to contact you at that email address saying, we need the marketing image. You're like, oh, I sent that in April. And you're like, no, that's not an image for your show. So think about the images you're creating, and also images that are for pre-production purposes if you've never shot your show before. Ones that are not so great is sort of like you playing beer pong with your friends and just saying, hey, here, this is the group. And we've had those photos of people just like being at a party saying, well, this is everyone in the group. Can't they run this picture? We're like, no.
And continuing on photos and the difference between a marketing image and a PR image. A marketing image could be your poster, could be your postcard, something with the show title and with information about the show. A PR image could be a headshot if that's what you have, could be show photos that someone takes during a rehearsal or during a previous production, could be show photos from an entirely different show that you don't need to tell people that, because it still is your company and still is your aesthetic.
Yeah, which I think is great. So also, that's the photo thing. So what we do is when we send out information saying the Fringe Festival is coming, we do give specific links to the site for the Fringe Festival so they have access to it. It's not like we copy the entire calendar and send it to them. But if your show, if someone does ask about your show for specific reasons, we do follow up with you individually, and then we try to arrange all the interviews and everything that goes along like that. A lot of times, too, with your own connections, we had that story like on the Loop radio station last year, because there was a guy, one of the DJs lived in the area, and his wife saw the show and then contacted me and said, we want to interview these specific people. So it's not like we're telling them. But the more you can do to get very specific information about who your show serves and then have a compelling image helps with overall.
And that is something that we also address in the beginning of the marketing guide that we sent out today. We ask you about, determining your target audience. So sit down with that, think it through. It does make a difference at the end of the day. And James, just so I'm clear, you send that PR questionnaire to every person in the
Well, we don't have to send it. You send it to us once it's completed. I know that Michaela always sends me the form that says, here's the people, here's the contacts, because we didn't have to do this, you've already done.
Got it. So we do ask you for that information, and when you fill it out, again, that's just another deadline to hit, another T to cross, I to dot, because it does go directly to our company.
Which is really, really cool.
I want to say one more thing about photos. I'm a big fan of putting people in photos as well. I think if your photo is just a logo or an abstract image, it doesn't say much about what your show is. And I think it's really, really impactful to have people in your show image. That's my 2 cents.
So going on to press releases, so as we talked about, both the Fringe Festival and James are going to be doing whole festival marketing. But in addition, you should be marketing your own show and reaching out to different people. And one of the ways to do that is through a press release to media outlets. We're going to post to the Facebook group, and there's some information in the artist marketing guide on what organizations you can reach out to, ranging from main media outlets, the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, local radio stations, the Chicago Reader, Time Out Chicago, all of that, and we'll share some of that on Facebook, or I'll share some of that on Facebook. And for those, you should be doing a standard press release. On here, there's a resource link for how to write a press release. It's specifically about theatrical press releases and has a really nice breakdown of that info. You can also Google how to write a press release. A press release is not a place to express amazing, unique creativity. Because you're emailing people who get a ton of them and who want to get the info as quickly as possible. Press releases are not a place to include images. You should include links to images. You should include how to get those images. You should include how to have your contact info, and all of that's at that link or at how to write a press, or if you Google how to write a press release. But a press release, at the end of the day, should be pretty standard text. If you are then also emailing other niche targeted organizations, that's where you might have a little more flexibility. So as an LGBT theater artist, if I'm emailing a Chicago LGBT group, I may send them my press release, but then in the email may take some more time to say, as a member of this community, I'd really like you to come out, and I'd really like you to share it with your constituents and your patrons. And so that's a place where there is a little more flexibility and a little more room for creativity. But for those press releases to media outlets, that's not a place to deviate from the norm, because they get a ton of them, and if they can't quickly see the info they need of the description, how to contact you, where that media stuff is, they're not going to take the time to dig through to find it. Anything else?
And I think just to add to that too, again, there's that weird line between marketing and public relations. When you're sending out a press release, it's, as they say, it's just the facts. It's not the time to do marketing, so you're not going to send the headlines like, the greatest show ever seen in Chicago, where you're just like, I'm a stellar performer. It's because you're not going to use those adjectives because it's supposed to be just the facts. I'm doing this. Here's a brief synopsis of what my show's about, times, dates, ticket prices, just to try to make it easier as possible. So just remember when you're sending it to them, they do receive a lot, but also be conservative with the amount of words you use so that they don't need to have the artists, you know, here is my view on how this story became. Here's
a press release should probably be one page, certainly no more than 2 pages.
It should be one page.
It's sort of, it's like a resume, that if it's not amazing, they're not going to keep reading. Similarly, I would say for press releases, making them as easy to access as possible. If you're emailing people, include the text in the body of the email and as a PDF attachment rather than as a Word doc or Mac pages. So again, that it can be as opened as quickly and easily by as many people as possible. If you're sending out a press release as a Word or as a PDF, sending it out as, you know, Rebecca Kling dash show title dash Cincy, or this is not Cincy Fringe, I've been on the road a lot, Chicago Fringe 2014, not my press release.pdf. As easy to open as possible. We talked about photos. For reviewers, hopefully, as part of both what the Fringe Festival is doing, as part of what Shout is doing, as part of your press releases, you'll get some reviewers. And when that happens, you can have press kits for them. You can have digital press kits, which can include your press release, those awesome, amazing photos. I would say 3 to 5. Links to video, if it's a web format, that's something they might be able to use. Links to all of your online places, if you have a blog, if you have an artist site, if you have other events coming up, all of that can be helpful. The press release, or the press kit is then where you can have your bio, is then where you can have all of the things, yeah. You can also have a physical press kit at your theater venue. That's going to be a trade-off both in terms of time and energy. If a reviewer knows that they're going to want to see your show ahead of time, they're probably just going to want the digital. If they happen to be here and come in, it may be helpful to print out a couple of something to hand out. and maybe a CD with some of those images. But I wouldn't stress too much about having a physical press kit because of we aren't doing shows for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and for better or for worse, we're not getting dozens and dozens of reviewers coming to our Fringe shows, to individual Fringe shows, but the festival as a whole, sure. And so taking time and money to make a beautiful physical press kit is probably not the best use. Anything else?
And on reviewers, if we get a call from members saying we're going to review your show, we do let you know that saying, hey, Friday at 10 p.m., this person's going to be in your audience, just so you know, and it's up to you to let the performers know. And we discussed this earlier. Some people like to inform the performers saying, hey, X is going to be here, so don't be freaked out when you walk out on stage and there's a reviewer because the theaters are small and you're staring right at it. So also that's when the time is that I'll say, if you have not submitted photos that are high res to the Fringe, I'll be like, if you want a photo to run with this wherever it's running, please send photos immediately, or your photos won't happen at all. And that's why, again, when you're filling out the form, make sure you have the best phone number you can and an email, because we've had in the past where I've contacted people saying, hey, this person's coming, I've called you every day, I'm emailing. I'm like, well, I don't check that email very much. And it's like, well, then don't put that on the form as your contact information.
It sounds silly, but it happens.
Yeah.
And the last thing on the general PR, and this it's talked about in the Fringe Guide, and I highly recommend you take some time with a friend who's not working on the show, is brainstorm where you need to be reaching out to. For some communities, it's easy. If you are a member of an identity community, of religion, or of race, or of gender and sexuality, there are built-in organizations that you can be reaching out to say, hey, I'm a queer performer. Can you let your queer audience know about this? Hey, I'm a Jewish performer. Can you let your Jewish audience know about this? There are also ways in which you might have stuff that doesn't immediately strike you as obvious, that having that brainstorm over a bottle of wine is going to be really helpful. I was talking with an artist who was doing a project on, this was a visual arts project, so it wasn't specifically this, but was doing a visual arts project on abandoned hospitals, and realized that she could be talking to people who work at hospitals, my phone is beeping, as a potential audience, and reaching out to, you know, doctors, nurses and doctors, professional organizations, and say, hey, would you like to come to this? That's something that maybe just sitting down wouldn't have been obvious, and certainly isn't going to be anything that we necessarily know to do for you. So brainstorm, get a bottle of wine, think about where can I hit and who can I reach out to get people in this show. Anything else before we move on?
I wanted to say just one last thing about press. We don't have an official policy about you guys contacting the press on behalf of your own show, even though that's something that James will do as our PR person. But we do ask you to use your discretion. So spamming the shit out of Carrie Reed at the Trib, for example, might not be the best policy for her. You know, be inspired to come see your show. Same with any other performer, any other reviewers at Time Out or the Trib. You know, hitting them once with your show respectfully. If they're interested, they will contact you.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the sample calendar. So moving forward, a big question that comes up is where to spend money. And we have sort of a breakdown of three things. What should you absolutely spend money on? What can you spend money on but maybe don't need to? And what should you probably not spend money on? So what should you absolutely spend money on? Postcards and posters. One of the things that is really exciting about being at a Fringe festival is that you're in a festival environment with dozens of other shows being seen by hundreds and thousands of other people. And so having posters at every one of the venues, having posters at Fringe Central, having postcards at every one of the venues, and being able, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this more shortly, to hand those postcards out at different shows is absolutely something you should be spending money on. Ideally, and this is can you spend money on it, ones that look beautiful. That is not a strength of mine. Visual art is not a strength of mine. And so I hire a designer to do that. If you know someone in your company, or if you yourself know you can make a really beautiful poster or postcard, go for it. Don't spend money on it. If you know that's not your strength, or if you try for a weekend and then decide that's maybe not the best use of your time, spend some money on that. It doesn't need to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, but you want something that when you're handing out to get people to want to see your show. The only other thing with that is thinking about making that budget, and there's a sample budget list at the bottom again, which specifically looks at making a small theater company show. And so thinking about, you probably don't need 20,000 postcards and 10,000 posters. I would say more than 100 posters is probably unrealistic, even if you're postering other neighborhoods. And more than 500 postcards is probably unrealistic, unless you're really, really, really flyering a ton. If you know you have a cast of 15 and you got a shit ton of time, sure, print some extras and go to some big neighborhoods in Chicago and try and get them in every coffee shop and hand them out to every person walking down the street. If, as a solo performer, I don't have an unlimited amount of time, and I want all my postcards to be gone by the end of the festival. I don't want to have them sitting in my trunk for 4 years. I cleaned out my trunk and found some Fringe posters 4 years ago. And that meant I printed too many. And so you want to find that balance and think about that for how much they're going to cost. There are a lot of good places to get them done online cheaply, and I'll post some of these on the Facebook group. I like Print because I think they're pretty cheap, but also still a nice company to work with. I know some people who like Print, which I believe is a Chicago-based company. I know some people who like, I think it's Vistaprint. And if you just Google cheap postcards or cheap posters, there are a million different places. Do some comparative shopping, see what's going to work for you.
I think we put some in the marketing guide as well. Some companies.
Any other things that you think people absolutely should be spending?
Don't, just as far as, again, print materials, for record again, don't forget, official selection of Chicago Fringe Festival. Got to put it on all your posters. Got to put it on all your postcards.
And I was going to say also, and once again, don't do the overkill. If you're going to print 500 posters, you realize if you wrap a telephone pole with all your posters, the next day they're going to be gone. So make sure you're putting posters where they're going to stay the longest amount of time and where you're going to be using the most effective way. Like when you're saying about postcards, there are people who may be at a coffee shop who are going to look at your postcard and say, yeah, I can do that. But sometimes you're walking down the street and you see a poster that may be, you know, if it's in a music venue and you have no music at all and you're talking about something, it's not worth putting that one poster that you spend whatever your money on in a spot. So if you have the posters created, strategically think about where you want to distribute them. Like Jefferson Park is great because that's where the Fringe Festival is happening. If you're doing like an LGBTQ thing, you say, okay, I know I'm going to hit that Halstead strip because that's where my audience is. If I know I'm going to do like a thing on growing up in Wicker Park, I'm going to hit specific places in Ukrainian Village in Wicker Park because that's where my audience is. But don't think that I'm going to spend $1,000, have someone distribute this, and my poster's going to be seen all over the place, may not equal tickets, because every dollar you spend, you want to spend judiciously. And also, Rebecca, earlier you were saying about your own budget when you're creating it, to look at it realistically, saying, if you're going to be in a venue that has 20 seats, then you're going to do 5 performances and your tickets are $10, realize that if you're spending $1,000 on posters and postcards, you're going to come back with negative $500. So when you're creating budget, which is the not-for-profit world, which is okay, but think about your overall spending and just realistically, as you're budgeting, that's what a budget's for. Help to say, like, if I do sell out every performance of this, how much money am I making? How much money do I need to raise in order to pay off that the deficit that's going to be hitting with tickets?
Right, and we realize that people have different goals. Some people don't care about the amount of money that they're pulling in during the Fringe Festival. Again, this is all for just FYI things you should be thinking about.
What can you spend money on? That isn't mandatory. One of the things that is always fun to see is handouts, tchotchkes that are more creative than postcards. So buttons are always fun, and people wear them and then say, oh, there's that Fringe button again. A couple years ago, there was someone doing a show about driving the Oscar Mayer Wiener mobile around, and she got Oscar Mayer Wiener hot dog whistles with her show name on it. And everyone had that at every Fringe performance. So thinking about if there are any creative things that you can do to help get your show out there. Something I've joked about is if I'm spending about a penny a postcard, maybe it would be fun to just spray paint a bunch of pennies a certain color, do all of my show marketing that color, and hand pennies out instead of postcards and say, I didn't spend any money on postcards this year. Here's a penny. Come see this show. So thinking of ways, I haven't done that yet, but I do think it would be fun to find different ways to use that.
Someone's going to
show out.
Please steal that idea.
And also, you don't have to, like, she was lucky that the Wienermobile whistles already existed. Is that you can take anything if you're, and I'm just making things up, you know, you're talking about the summer you did a tour playing Frisbee, and if you handed out people Frisbee, that you just took your own postcard and, you know, put a tape on it so that all of a sudden now the Frisbee is your piece. The more interactive and the more fun it can be, people are going to remember it. Anything that can hang around your neck or you stick on.
Something I've also joked about but haven't had the energy to do is because some of these are non-traditional theater spaces, they are worn.
I was about to say that.
And so every year at every festival I've been to, the joke is someone needs to make posters that are hand fans and everyone will want them. So that is something that, again, is going to be a little more expensive than doing normal postcards. But if you can find a place to cheaply do good hand fans, everyone will have your postcard and want to keep it.
Or you eat a lot of popsicles, then you could just glue it onto something.
Other things you can spend money on.
I also want to say that I'm very partial to buttons because don't forget everybody needs to buy a button to get into the festival. So if they're going to be wearing that button and you're marketing with your own button that sits right next to it, it's probably going to get a lot of looks.
And that's the type of thing that you can, it doesn't need to be an all or nothing. You could do 300 postcards and 50 buttons and get the buttons out and still have that as part of your marketing, but finding that balance between maybe if buttons are more expensive, you can't do 500 buttons. Other things you can spend money on, we talked about designers of wanting your material to look good. Ads are something you can spend money on, and it's something to consider. For the Fringe Festival itself, there's a physical guide that everyone gets, that everyone uses, and that's a place you can put in ads. I've sort of gone back and forth on that, and I think those ads, and you can talk for a minute about what that offers, are awesome for groups that are from out of town or that don't have the time or ability to do a big push beforehand or are coming in the second weekend and aren't able to be here flyering. I think it's a great way to remind people about your show and that it's going on.
I think there's a maxim in marketing that, like, if you market a bad thing, people are only going to know that it is a bad, they're going to know more that it's a bad thing. So my theory, of course I'm not going to tell you this as the executive director that you shouldn't spend money on putting ads into our program. I think that they can be effective. I think you have to have a good looking ad. If you put a bad ad in our program, and that's the main showpiece that we send out and that everybody picks up to look through the schedule that they're going to make during their festivaling, that's what's going to come across. So don't do that. If you feel like, oh man, I just do not have the time to put, into this ad and it's just going to be all text-based and not that interesting, then don't do it. But somebody who has an awesome ad with a beautiful visual, maybe they have somebody else who's already done a review of their show and they have a little quote, they have a full quote on it. Like that would convince me. Right? If I'm looking through 50 shows and I don't know what I'm going to see next, that might be the thing that makes me pick your show over another to go check out. And that's when
you get to use like your marketing experience, because you might have done like the Cincinnati Festival or Minneapolis, and all you have to do is add the sensation of the Cincinnati.
Which Rebecca has done many times on her posters.
And I love seeing that on other shows. As seen in
it's credibility.
Boom, 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 boom. I think that's a really great way to tell people a little bit more about your show and to remind people that you're doing stuff outside of just this festival. I think Facebook ads are worth looking into. I've been doing them the last couple of years and have gotten enough response that I keep doing them, but not enough that I recommend them wholeheartedly. What's awesome about Facebook ads is you can be really targeted in who sees them. So you can say specifically, people who have said they are in Chicago, maybe you could even do in Jefferson Park, who say they're interested in LGBT and theater. That's pretty darn targeted, and you're going to have difficulty getting that targeted off the internet. In addition, you can do very specific budgeting. So you can say, I have $100 total to spend in the next 2 weeks of the last 2 weeks of August. And once that $100 is gone, stop spending money. It's also cool because it'll then show you how many people saw your ads, how many people clicked your ads, and how many people actually said they're coming on Facebook. And so you can see, according to Facebook, I spent $50 and 10 people said they were coming. That's $5 a person, which at $10 a ticket is worth it. The question is, did they actually come? And that's where it gets hard to really figure out.
And the other thing, the way Facebook is just becoming a more and more we want to make money organization, is that if you've worked hard as an organization to build up your followers, you realize when you post on it, you might have 600 followers and it says, this post reached 50 people. Because they want you to say, okay, I want to give that a boost, which again costs money, but you can say, yes, I know that if there's 600 people following me, I want 600, so I'll pay the extra $50 to have that boost, so at least it's showing up on every single person's feed, rather than just doing that ad. And that's the other thing that's nice about that ad is you can start going crazy, and as you're pinpointing things, you can see the number on the side says, this is going to 10,000 people. So if you're like, I'm a gardener who's into hedgehogs, who loves a musical, like street festivals, there's like 2 people in Jefferson Park, you're like, yes, I want them to see it. And most likely they will come. But it's just, and I think before you start doing the individual ads, you have to look at your own list of people who are following you and say, they're your #1 audience because they know who you are or they're choosing to follow you, and to make sure you're boosting the posts, even if you're just saying, I'm appearing at the Fringe Festival. And again, that's a way of, you can again create your own marketing, happy to be a part of opening night at the Fringe Festival, or just throwing a quote about the Fringe Festival, which people may think is about you. So make sure you work those angles.
Any other stuff that is optional about spending money?
There are specific, and again, it's all about your niche audiences. If you realize, and I used just gardening a second ago, if there's a blog that you know that you look, or let's just say food, if you're going to do a story on food, and you know there's a blog that you follow all the time, it may be worth saying, hey, how much would it cost for me to do an ad in your newsletter that I get every week, or on your page? Because some people have never been approached, so they'll be like, I don't know, $25, because no one's ever asked them that before. But if you're into that scene, or even if it's music, you could just say, or you could say, I have 600 people on Facebook. If you put this quote in your next, or this paragraph and my photo in your next email blast, I will blast out on Facebook, hey, you guys, make sure you check out this website.
Or even to use a more tangible example, there's a local theater company in Jefferson Park. Goal!
USA.
There is a local theater company in Jefferson Park, and in the past they've done shows about the history of Jefferson Park. And say they went and advertised in a very hyper-local newspaper like Natick newspaper, which is in this neighborhood. I am sure somebody is going to see that ad, and that's a very specific sort of targeted market, But otherwise, I would say avoid. I mean, we're moving to the next
And that
stage.
goes to, yeah.
Most print materials, I think, are dead. I don't think
Well,
money.
I think-
Especially full print. Yeah.
So what to avoid spending
I
money
wouldn't like
on?
necessarily contact the Tribune and just throw something in the Friday.
I want a whole page ad.
Yeah.
In part because that cost-benefit analysis, that you cannot make enough money selling tickets at a Fringe Festival to make a $10,000 print ad buy worth it. You just cannot get that many bucks in seats. And so looking at advertising in some of these larger papers or on the radio or whatever, it's not that people won't hear it or people won't see it, it's that we can't operate as Fringe performers on that scale. Other things to avoid spending money on, just be realistic. That goes back to absolutely get some posters, but think about how much you're actually going to be able to go out and put them. Or think about if you can enlist friends to help you out. I can offer a 6-pack if someone can take 50 posters and put them up in their neighborhood, or 25 posters and put them up in their
Or
neighborhood.
just do it with them.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too. You said you found posters. It was your show, and you still had posters in your car. And a lot of time, if you do have a cast of 10, and it's like, hey, take 10 posters and you should put them up in your neighborhood. A year later, you're going to get in the car and there's the 10 posters still there. Minus one that like they may give to their mom.
Yeah.
So just make sure that if you are going to do the poster thing or postcard, that they are being distributed. So it's just like, and even the other places too, you can look at is even if your local library or the library right here, because people who are looking at places to go and looking into things. And when you are creating your piece, again, think of budget like the 4x6 postcard works, the 11x17 poster works. Once you start going bigger with die-cut images or light up or neon, or it gets more expensive and it's not worth the effort.
The last thing about spending money is take some time to do that budget. I really like the sample budget that's linked here. It's through Red Table Theater, who does a lot of Fringe festivals and has a budget that is built around Fringe type shows, and so has some suggestions and things to think about around advertising, around if you're from out of town, shit, did we remember to put gas in our budget? If you're local, did you remember to think about parking in your budget? All of these different things that should be budgeted in the show and you don't want to sneak up later. 2 questions about not spending money. So there are things that you can do that don't cost money, but still cost time. So what can you shouldn't? What free-ish things should you be doing? The first thing, which we talked about, is using your time. So you have those flyers, you have those posters, actually get out there and put them up. Put them up around the festival. If it makes sense, find those organizations, find those LGBT organizations, or those Jewish community centers, or that hedgehog gardening club, and get them those posters. Similarly, make a Facebook event, ask people to share it, invite people. Even if you don't spend money to advertise it, it's still a nice way to have something that you can post updates about, you can send out to people, and you can ask people to invite folks that they know.
Do we want to talk about like actually going to the shows and saying things before and how important
Yeah.
can help each other at this point, because that's free.
Absolutely.
Want to speak to that?
So one of the things that is the most enjoyable as an artist about being in a Fringe festival is the festival environment. And one of the beautiful things about the Chicago Fringe is we get artist passes that let us see shows for free. It's rush ticket, so if the show sells out, we don't get in, but I think that's fair. But as an artist, I would rather have 5 paying audience members and 20 artists than 5 paying audience members and no one else. So as artists, we get those free passes, and I highly, highly, highly encourage you to go to shows, and then flyer before and after. At every show, particularly at shows that might have some amount of relevance to yours. If you're, as a solo performer, I want to hit up those solo shows. As an LGBT performer, I want to hit up anything else that's doing around LGBT or women's issues. And talk with other performers about that as well. Something I like doing that may or may not be appropriate for your show is at the end of a show, I'll come out, thank the audience for coming, ask them to help flyer for me. So I'll put out flyers and ask them to help talk up my show. And I'll ask any artists in the audience to give themselves shout-outs. That's certainly not mandatory, and if you just did a really serious show, maybe it's not an appropriate space. But I think it's a beautiful way to build that community of, I just did this show, I want to know what artists are in the house, give yourself a shout-out. When and where is your show? Beyond that, cross-promotion can be really effective. If you have a print program that you're handing out to your audience, think about emailing other shows and saying, hey, I know you're doing a solo show too. Do you want to give each other, if you're doing a half sheet, do you want to give each other a quarter page on the back?
There's also a Facebook group that's set up right now for all the 2014 performers, right, Mackenzie? That's all set up. So utilize that, begin networking with other performers, earlier the better.
And also, like,
these sort of connections.
once the venues are announced and you know the schedule, you can say and approach the other people who are going to be in the same venue.
Yeah.
And say, hey, I'm going to be the 8 o'clock show. I have another show tomorrow at 6. If you come in and talk to my audience, would you shout out mine, or I will come in and talk to them myself, because people are going to be familiar with that building as well.
Which, by the way, I know some people might have questions about what is their specific venue. We're working on the schedule right now, so it should be out within the next 2 weeks.
And one of the things I have seen at every festival I've gone to is a really, really good show that has empty houses because they're not out there promoting. That they'll say, oh, we printed 20 postcards and put a couple out at each venue and do our shows. And we do our shows and we come in and then we go home and drink. Yeah. And they're bummed that people aren't coming to their shows because they're not out socializing, they're not out promoting, they're not at Fringe Central handing out postcards and flyers, and they're not seeing other shows, and
talking
talking to staff. And there might be a show that isn't as good that's selling out because people know about it, because they're out.
And I think also just even when they're saying, you can tell who are the seasoned Fringe Festival performers, because when you're leaving a venue, they're there handing you a postcard. Because, and I always forget these two guys.
Jay Harris, Jay and, oh goodness, John.
Yeah, they did the show in like Long Johns. So you would be in Pilsen, and they'd be just standing on the corner handing out in their Long Johns, in makeup, just like in character, just postcards. So number one, you're just like, well, that's interesting. Yeah. And the other thing is just like, well, that was pretty cool. And that show did really, really well because they not only did that, but also their image was just them looking at each other and biting into an apple, and everyone wanted to run it. Like people would say, like, can you send me the apple picture? Like that became the specific picture for that year because everyone kept asking for it.
I always hold them up as an example of great marketing because A, they had a great show, right? So great marketing was backed up by a fantastic show, and B, they did hustle. And so I remember they had a button. Yeah. Their button was fantastic. It said handshake uppercut on it. Had this great image, right? We saw that. And they got to know us right away. I met them within the first week. I met them during their tech. They came up to me, made friends with me and other people on staff. And so I knew right away that these are really friendly guys. And they have a great show to boot. Of course I'm going to tell everybody to go see this show. Of course, you know, people are coming in, they want to know what show to see. Of course I want them to have a great experience. So of course I'm going to send them to see that show first and foremost.
And the other thing about free advertising and marketing is the social media channels, especially like Twitter. If you know you have a specific channel, you can reach out and chat with someone and do it in real time so that other people can join the conversation as well as you're saying, you know, we're looking forward to coming to Chicago, or hey, it's the first time we're in Chicago, we're going to be at Jefferson Park. Where do we go for a drink? Where do we do this? So you get to be involved, and you start chatting more, and you get to say, well, since you're in Jefferson Park or you're visiting Chicago, you need to come see the show.
Free things.
And I also want to say that another two words that describe them: creative, of course, being out there in their long johns doing the marketing stuff, and also relentless. And I think this is really important because relentless in a good way. If you come to Fringe Central, for example, on a Thursday night, you see that it's quiet, and you say, I'm never coming back to Fringe Central during the entire festival, you are missing out on huge swaths of potential audience. So don't expect that because a certain venue or a certain place happens to be quiet during a certain night, you know, that same place will be bustling with people on a Saturday or a Friday. So it's important that you go out there, hit places more than once, and get the word out.
And the next thing too,
I've had people come up to me and say, I saw you flying the first night, I saw you flying the second night, I saw you flying the third night, but all right, I have to go see your show because you've been bothering me. If you are nice about it and if you are relentless about it, people will come.
And I was going to say, and also, if you have the option of being in Chicago, it's not like you necessarily have to say, I have to wait till the Thursday of Fringe to start. You can be here a week before. You know that there's activities, and the Fringe has been good about that, saying, we're going to be part of the farmer's market, or we're going to be this. If there's a specific, even if you're doing a character, or even if there's something that you go up and you just start handing out flyers, people start remembering, or if you have something so unique, or that if the guys are in their Long Johns, it's just something like, I need to see that Long John show. And you have the benefit of being in Chicago earlier, so it's not like, I have to wait until Thursday. You can start a week before, you can start a month before.
And I will mention a couple of those before we
Free things you can do but aren't mandatory. Looking into grants and sponsorships is not a bad idea depending on your show. At this point, sometimes a lot of the grant cycles are going to be passed, but if there's a specific community that you're involved in, there's certainly Illinois grants, there are Chicago artist grants, there are undoubtedly women's artist grants, and Jewish artist grants, and queer artist grants, and so it may be worth looking into if you have a specific topic or a specific community, seeing if there's any money out there for that topic or community. Similarly with sponsorship, I have seen people get marketing sponsorships of someone knows someone at the print shop, and so they're going to help with t-shirts if they throw their name on the back. I saw someone in Cincy Fringe a couple years ago who got a beer sponsorship. So he had beer in every show and repeatedly mentioned it, and they gave him a shit ton of free beer, and that's not a bad deal. So if there's anything you might think might be topical, thinking about sponsorships, thinking about grant opportunities, I would say it's also worth looking into, if you know you want to send a bunch of emails out, looking into something like MailChimp. which is free below something like 1,000 or 1,500 people, 3,000 now. So it's free pretty long until you get pretty big, and it is more effective and less obnoxious than CCing 300 people. And so if you know you want to be sending out emails, looking into something like MailChimp. The last thing of what you can do but should not be doing is annoying people. And this can be a fine line, because you do want to be out there, you do want to be relentless, but you also want to be polite.
Tactful.
Hey, I have this awesome show I think you should hear about. No thanks. Okay. And that can really be as much as it is. You want to be hitting, and you want to be out there, but you don't want to be an asshole about it. And so you want to sign that back.
Yeah, don't be an asshole.
Similarly, it is possible to post to Facebook and Twitter every 10 minutes. It is probably not your best interest to do so. There's a saturation point past which it's just going to make things worse. Any other thoughts on
And I think also just the craziness of the hashtag, whether you use it on Twitter, whether you use it on Instagram, whether you use it on Tumblr, it's just amazing, because even with my own Instagram, like I'll be at a restaurant and just make up some crazy hashtag like delicious who loves fries, and then someone from like Scandinavia will like the picture because for some reason they did a search for that weird old hashtag. So it's like when you're posting something, abuse, and that's one I think you can, which I think is often funny, is like when it's like hashtag for likes. Just use your hashtags so that you are reaching out to every possible group, because then when I look at that, or if I do an Instagram or I see a Twitter that has 16 hashtags, I'll read the whole and be like, okay, that's good for, you know, Russian people who escaped from Israel who are looking at it. I got it all because of that. And that way you can do it. And again, it's free. And with Twitter, it's different than Facebook, because if you post every 10 minutes, everyone's like, I'm just deleting it.
Yeah.
Twitter, you get lost with everything, so you can go crazy and just keep building this audience.
The last thing I wanted to say that's just free is also, don't forget that, you know, the core of your audiences are probably going to be, and especially if you're a smaller performer, are going to be friends and family, right? So don't forget to make that personal ask. A phone call goes a long way these days because people don't do it. Right? Even a personal email goes a long way, or a text message, because it feels personal, and it is personal, right? So don't forget, like, your core group of people, because those are the people that make a difference.
To add to that, too, is don't forget the people you work with, because there's always those people, like, you might have worked with, and then it's 2 weeks after Fringe, and someone will be like, oh, what did you do? Well, I performed at the Fringe Festival. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell me? It's like, don't be afraid to say, hey, here's my poster, I'm sticking it up in my office, or here's something, or I can just, it's like, you want to sell tickets, that's the goal, so do not be afraid to ask anyone and everyone, especially if there's any connection at all. It's just like, you know, as you're building your set, or if you're going to Home Depot, just make sure you tell that person, hey, this is the show I'm in.
Yeah.
You know, I've just spent $200 with you.
I happen to work out at a very friendly gym where a lot of people know and talk to each other because it's a CrossFit gym. That has been a right place for me to get people to come to my show, because A, most of them are non-performers,
Right.
and they're looking for stuff to do, and so this is new to them.
Yeah.
But B, also because I have a personal connection with them. I see them working out all the time. I know them by name and face, and so that's been a really fruitful area for me.
So let's go through this sample calendar that's on here and think a little bit about timeline. Yeah. I just want to power through that and then talk a little bit more about fundraising and that budget thing, shout out resources, and then if there are any questions. So sample calendar, 6 to 8 weeks out, you should have, if you have a show website, that should be up and running. You should have your promotional photos prepped. You should have your poster and postcard design pretty much done. And that's when you should be sending out your initial press release, 6 to 8 weeks out. By that point, so we're talking early to mid-July. The Fringe Festival schedule should, knock on wood, be done by that point. So you should be able to send out your press release
Send
and
out
all that
complaints to
stuff.
Rachel's statements. Rachel's fantastic. I know, I was joking. It was just.
And that can be the first round to that media saying, hey, this is going on. And if you do get picked up by larger media, fingers crossed, they'll appreciate that extra lead. Then you can give yourself a break, finish working on your show, finish writing your show. And 2 to 4 weeks out, send out a follow-up press release as a reminder. If someone does not contact you that's the last time you should be sending them that press release. I would argue, and please disagree, like you can send maybe 2 press releases to a big reviewer or to a big blog or to a big individual. After that, if they are reaching out to you, you should stop bugging. This goes back to that point of you want to be relentless but not an asshole. 2 to 4 weeks out, make your Facebook event. Invite everyone you can possibly think of on Facebook. If you're going to do advertising, you can start thinking about that. That might be a little bit early for Facebook advertising, but you can start thinking about it. Print your posters and postcards. You want to do that with enough advance lead time so you're not panicking about it. 1 week out, if you're going to do Facebook advertising, that's probably the time to do it, at least a week out, but much more than that. I mean, we all know that we're not looking at things on Facebook a month in advance, or I'm not looking at things on Facebook a month in advance. A week out or so, start putting stuff up, start putting out posters. At that point, I think we can come down and start postering around here, start putting out flyers. At that point, you can start doing those social media reminders to get out, but again, particularly on Facebook, don't be too obnoxious. And then during the festival itself, you want to be coming out every single day. You want to be handing out those flyers every single day. The way I've phrased it is, that is my job as a Fringe performer. The visible part is showing up at 6:30 for a 7 o'clock show, doing the 7 o'clock show, and at 8 being done. But before and after that, I should be out flying. Take care of yourself. I have a hard time doing stuff before my show, particularly earlier in the run. So maybe before my show I can be out flying because I need my beat time. But definitely afterwards, you want to be out there flying. And that is part of your job. Also to have fun, also to have a good time. But if butts and seats is important to you, then that's something you need to be thinking about. So that at the end of the festival, you're not saying, well, shit, I had 20 people come my whole run. I had a better show than that, but no one knew about it. Fringe time, engaging people on social media, reminding them that your show is happening. Posting on Facebook and Twitter, just had my opening night, it was awesome. Just saw so-and-so's show, it was really great. And then see other shows. Again, building that community is one of the reasons that people do Fringe. And so I think it's sort of counterproductive to do your show and then go home and hide. But it's also going to help get you an audience by doing your show and having a visible reminder by your presence that people want to do. Any other thoughts from that time?
Nope. Sounds great.
The resources and contact info at the bottom of the sheet. Vinny's email, my email, and James's email are all here. Please feel free to reach out to us. The resources. Cameron Moore is a touring artist and Fringe performer, and she has a Fringe-specific 101 ebook. That's a pay what you can for $2 or more. So it's at least $2. I think it is worth more than $2. I've used it in the past, and she talks a lot about how to distribute flyers without being a jerk. She talks a lot about how to write a good Facebook ad, and so that's something that might be worth a couple bucks. How to write a press release. You can Google that and find other examples. I like this specific one because it is theater specific. They happen to be an LGBT theater group, but they don't. The press release is not. There's not a special queer press release format that we use.
That's not what I heard.
There's a lot more flourishes.
Yeah. And then the sample budget. Again, this is a theater that is specifically doing Fringe work and touring work, and so their sample budget is helpful in thinking about that range, because you can find really awesome sample budget for a $50,000 or $100,000 or $5 million organization. Not super helpful as a Fringe performer. The last thing I would say about budgeting is think about fundraising. Think about Kickstarter. Think about Indiegogo. Think about direct asks. Think about it carefully, though. I have had the most success with my fundraisers when they are smaller than my whole budget and when they are going towards a specific part of my larger budget. So let's say my Fringe Festival budget is $2,000, and $500 of that was for the festival fee, and $200 of that is for gas to go to Cincinnati and Minneapolis, and $150 of that is printing postcards and whatever. Rather than doing a Kickstarter for $2,000, I'll do a $200 Kickstarter for gas, And I am almost guaranteed to make that and then some. And I feel better about asking people, hey, can you chip in $10? Which for $200 goes a long way, than saying, hey, can you chip in $10? Which for $2,000 feels sort of weak. And so I would definitely recommend doing a fundraiser. Kickstarter, the pro is it's a bigger platform, so you're going to get more exposure potentially. The con of Kickstarter is that if you don't meet 100% of your goal, you get nothing. Indiegogo isn't quite as big, but you can set it up so that you get everything whether or not you meet that goal. But I think for a Fringe festival, it is, and then you can also just do direct ask. You can set up a PayPal link, or there are WordPress plugins if you want to just do your own fundraising. But I would highly encourage you to do fundraising for less than your full budget, and be very, very, and Kickstarter now requires this, but I recommend it anyway, of being transparent. Saying, it's going to cost me $2,000 to do this show this summer. Here's why. I'm asking for you to help me pay for the $200 gas money or the $500 festival fee, rather than saying the whole thing. Any other thoughts on that?
I think you're right on.
Any questions about any of that? I know there's a lot of you here, so if you could just keep if you could limit
If anybody has a question online, tweet that, let us know.
Everybody's been quiet, actually.
Okay, cool.
So, please feel free to reach out to us at any point. I know I'm on Facebook. I don't want to volunteer you all to talk on Facebook. I'm going to post some of this stuff to the Facebook page. This is available. I think Fringe put it up somewhere.
We'll have it hosted somewhere.
Okay, so this will be hosted somewhere. And I highly encourage you to check out the Street Promo 101. I encourage you to check out How to Write a Press Release. I encourage you to check out the sample budgets. None of this is difficult or scary if you put some time and thought.
Last but not least, Jefferson Park busking and promotion opportunities that are coming up. You should put these on your calendar. Eli's Cheesecake has a farmer's market. These, again, are in the artist marketing guide that was sent out today. Those dates are August 21st and August 28th. You can go up if you have time and busk anytime between 7 and 1 p.m. on both days. You can RSVP to our intern, Mackenzie. Also, the big one, if you're in town, is Jeff Fest. That happens July 26th and 27th. We had a great participation in this last year from Fringe artists. There was one group that came and they did a fake protest, which was a great creative marketing effort. But essentially, this is a busking opportunity. So if you have the type of show that you can come and do a little bit of a sample from your show, we also had a dance group that ran around with squirt guns and squirted each other. And we had a magician, because these are the types of things that are easy to sell in that sort of like outdoor environment. But again, that's the Neighborhood Arts Festival in Jefferson Park. We'll be taking submissions for artists to participate on that July 26th and 27th. Mackenzie will be getting in touch with you guys again regarding the opportunity, which you can see more information on that in the artist marketing guide on the last page.
And on that topic, if
second to last page.
Both leading up to the festival in July and August, and then those 2 weeks, see if there's anything else going on that might be relevant. I'm super bummed that I'm going to be out of town for Pride, because I would love to print postcards out and distribute them at Pride. That would be something really helpful. Oh well, if you know there's stuff going on, I don't know the legality of that, of just going up to people and handing shit out. But you're just going to get asked to stop. You're not going to get in trouble. I know the Wienermobile show went to Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, to the WBEZ show, and she handed them out to the audience and got a ton of people to come from that. So think about other stuff that's going on that might make sense for you to go and hand out your stuff.
Any other questions?
Go team.
Thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you, Rebecca. They generously come